Welcome to this week's episode of the State of Recruiting. I'm Jordan Scruggs, joined by Hank South. The State of Recruiting returns after some time off. It'll be the weekly Horns 24/7 recruiting podcast. It'll be us two about every week, talking all things Texas football recruiting, some team talk, how the Longhorns are doing on the field, and of course, some Texas high school football talk, like our friends Mike Roach, Hudson Standish, and Nick Harris used to do. Today, we're going to be starting it off. Texas, they're evaluating some senior risers. They've extended 3 offers so far since the start of the season. Still looking at a few other guys, but first, I want to start off Micah Smith, the UCLA offensive line commit out of Florida.
Yeah, so I think offensive line is kind of that's a hot topic with the Texas football fan base right now. I think there's some people that just want to say burn it all down, get some new offensive linemen in, hit the portal hard. I think that's what Texas is going to do, but obviously you want to continue to recruit the high school pipeline as well. Texas has 3 commitments in the class right now, but always keeping its eyes open, especially now when it seems like more offensive linemen are needed. But Micah Smith, really interesting prospect out of Vero Beach, Florida. And Florida, I don't know how many elite offensive linemen I can name that are from the state of Florida from the high school ranks. It's just not a state that really puts out a lot of high school talent at the offensive line position from my experience covering recruiting for, 11 years. But Micah Smith, maybe he's the exception, committed to UCLA. So, I think 3 weeks ago committed to UCLA, you could say, oh, uncommitted. I think right now committed to UCLA. It's like, oh, they're kind of America's team right now. They're on comeback. They've got the interim coach. They've got all the buzz. They're about to play Indiana. They can still make the playoff, believe it or not. But, I think recruits are still looking long-term, like, who is UCLA going to hire? So I think that kind of pause still gives other teams, a little window to maybe make things interesting with a guy like Micah Smith. And that's what Texas is trying to do. So they offered him, I think a couple weeks ago at this point. And I actually reached out to him right when they offered, and he didn't want to do any interviews. He's kind of keeping things quiet to himself, but he did say it's a big blessing, and he is going to talk to his parents about setting up an official visit. And so, it's pretty easy now to kind of narrow down when these guys might take official visits, because it's either going to be probably, I think you can already kind of write off Vandy weekend unless it's so it's an 11 a.m. kick. I don't think they're going to get a lot of guys out there for that. So you kind of look at Arkansas, you look at Texas A&M. A&M's after a holiday. So I think Arkansas is that sweet spot that Texas is really going to try to get these kids in for official visits in season. And Micah Smith, I would imagine they would like for him to do that. But, 6'5.5", 325 pounds. He's got length. He's got really good lateral movement. He's rated as an interior lineman, but I think a lot of projections have him as a tackle too. So, obviously fits that kind of versatile mold where, we see Nick Brooks recruited as a tackle. Now he's playing left guard, whether you like that or not. That's kind of what Texas recruits. So we'll see if he shows up for an official. I think Ohio State's recruiting him. I think OU is recruiting him. Tennessee, some other teams are kind of throwing their hats in the ring, but right now still committed to UCLA. We'll see if the Bruins make the comeback of all time and somehow make a run down the stretch. I don't think they will, but so far so good with the new interim staff. But that's kind of where they're at in terms of offensive line. But I know you were covering a cornerback they recently offered too.
Yeah, just wanted to hit on Smith real quick. He does have the IOL projection from our 24/7 sports scouting team. If he plays in the NFL, he will be playing probably, left guard or right guard. But at least at the college level, like you brought up, some tackle versatility, at least could play right tackle in my eyes, maybe a left tackle as well. But, need to get more updated measurements to speak on that more confidently. And as far as the recruitment goes, I mean, he chose UCLA back in the summer over several top-tier programs that were set to have better seasons and have had better seasons than UCLA. So what did it come down to? Talking with people, reading different things. NIL is a huge part of this recruitment. Pretty easy to assume most of the time when a kid commits to a UCLA over a program that's in a better spot, especially a kid from across the country on the East Coast in Florida. But with that, I think it'll be very interesting to track. UCLA, they've lost a lot of kids. and they're still offering kids, still taking commitments. This isn't a program that can afford for their personnel staff to not be doing their job, even though all those guys are going to get fired and replaced in the next 2 or 3 months. Whoever the new staff comes in, it's very unlikely they will be able to find an offensive lineman of Smith's caliber in however many days they have before signing day to get some new commits in the boat. So that being said, I do think if the NIL package was big enough to get them to commit to UCLA, it's either going to stay the same or only get bigger from here as UCLA tries to keep them. Because again, it's very unlikely whoever the new staff is will have enough time to be able to flip a prospect or land a prospect of his caliber on the O-line. And like Texas, like the rest of the country, UCLA needs O-linemen. Georgia, Ohio State, South Carolina are kind of the ones alongside Texas right now pushing. Ohio State had him a couple weeks ago for an official visit, and they've had the buzz. But, I mean, he doesn't seem like he's in a rush to make a decision and is obviously going to take a few more trips before he does come to a final decision on signing day. As far as the latest offer, Torrey Davis, not sure, out of Fairview High School in Boulder, Colorado. Another UCLA commit, or was a UCLA commit, recently decommitted. He's a 6'1", 185-pound prospect listed as an athlete. Some schools like him at receiver. Some like him at corner safety. Texas, Mark Orphy was who extended the offer, Texas's cornerbacks coach. So we are expecting the offer to be on the defensive side of the ball, but, you know, still wanting to hear more confirmation on that from Davis out in Boulder. As far as the player goes, there's a lot to like. He's currently an 89 graded 3-star, which is the highest grade you can have as a 3-star, number 21 athlete prospect in the country, and number 5 overall prospect in the state of Colorado. Originally took official visits to Oklahoma State, UCLA, and Kansas State before committing to UCLA in late June. Since decommitting from UCLA, he backed out of his pledge 8 days after Deshaun Foster was fired. He's picked up offers from Iowa, Wisconsin, Arizona State, Indiana, Texas, and Washington. Those are 6 programs that do a really good job developing high school players and NFL players, and especially guys that come from parts of the country like Boulder or just the recruiting hotbeds of those programs that typically don't produce NFL players. So I think this is a kid just based off the recent offers and those schools that do a good job evaluating and developing. He's going to have a shot to finish as a 4-star in my eyes just off of that. He's been awesome this season. He's been on a tear as a senior. Fairview was 7-1, and Davis leads them in rushing, receiving, tackling, and interceptions. He has 446 rushing yards and 13 touchdowns and is averaging over 10 yards per carry. And he's also already eclipsed 1,000 yards receiving, averaging 22.1 yards per catch, 13 touchdowns on 1,037 receiving yards. That's 130 a game and 3.3 touchdowns per game. He also has scored 10 two-point conversions this season, 5 rushing, 5 passing. On the defensive side of the ball, 44 tackles, 3 TFLs, 1 sack, 2 hurries, 5 interceptions, 4 PBUs, and a forced fumble. A lot of ball production, and that's what you love to see, you know, out of a corner or safety prospect. People have asked, you know, what type of competition is he playing out there in Boulder? Not good competition, I'll tell you that. A lot of slow players on the field. He looks like he's already in the NFL compared to them. But the good thing about him, he's doing what he's supposed to do versus, you know, below average competition by dominating and leading his team to 7-1. So I like him a lot. On top of that, he has great multi-sport data. Basketball averaged over 12 a game, over 3 rebounds per game, and over 2 assists per game as a junior in 2025. Believe has some old track data as well. And then his father, Elton Torrey Davis, played defensive back at Colorado in the mid-90s. So checks the multi-sport box, 3-phase experience. He also returns punts and kicks and the bloodlines box. So just a box checker, obviously a player that's on a tear as a senior, and a player that Texas is working to get to campus for a home game in November. It'll be interesting to see the numbers. Samari Matthews, Hayward Howard are committed at corner. Yaheem Riley out of Anderson is committed at safety. Yaheem Riley provides some safety nickel versatility. Hayward Howard, I think, is a true DB take. He can play any spot in the secondary, can project any spot in the secondary, and is a bigger guy at 6'3". And then Samari Matthews, he's a true kind of boundary corner, Kobe Black mold almost. So with that and Davis, very curious what the actual take would be if he was to end up committing to Texas, just because of those numbers. But I don't know. I'm excited to find out more. The third and final senior eval that they've offered, actually the first one that they offered, another Colorado native, Braylon Hodge out of Cherry Creek, familiar territory for the Longhorns. Same high school that produced Gunnar Helm, the draft pick of the Tennessee Titans in April. What should we know about Braylon Hodge?
Yeah, I mean, you just got done talking about Davis. Hodge, per 24/7 Sports' rankings, is ranked the number one overall player in Colorado. So obviously, Colorado is not this hotbed of talent, but number one in your state, it's still something. But he's a guy that was committed to Michigan State, and then I think the biggest thing from him in terms of this you know uptick in recruiting interest from all these other programs this fall was the fact that he moved from outside to inside. So all his tapes are inside now in terms of his positional, I guess, projection. And obviously, Texas at 6'3", 212 pounds. That's like a Johnny Nansen, like dream linebacker take in terms of kind of how the mold they look for. But really interesting prospect. Like I said, I don't know if the number one ranking in Colorado designates him a 4-star. I think he has a 4-star on 24/7 Sports. Yeah. So he's a 90 in our rankings on 24/7. But I was just
He
looking at his stats. I don't know. I'm assuming they're updated, but and Max Preps is being kind of weird, but he has 90 tackles on the season so far. I think one game has 21 tackles listed. So I mean, like he goes for the ball. He can read and react. He's athletic. He can cover tight ends. He can cover running backs. So he's rangy, and I think obviously that's what Texas loves. They love that they now have, some film of him playing inside linebacker as well for his team, Cherry Creek, which you mentioned, Gunnar Helm. When I talked to him, obviously it's been a minute since Gunnar Helm was in high school, so he didn't know Gunnar Helm, but he knows of Gunnar Helm and the success he had going from a program like Cherry Creek to Texas. Now he's with the Titans and doing pretty well in the league. So, when Texas offered him, I think just the vibe I got from talking to him was that and at the time he was committed to Michigan State. So, I was like, what's your status with the Spartans? And he's like, uh, I can't really say right now. It did not sound very committed, and sure enough, where are we at now? A month later, he's decommitted from Michigan State. I know Brandon Huffman did some reporting on his official visit slate, but Oregon is showing a lot of interest. I think they had him out on the 11th. Michigan had him out earlier in the month of October. In Texas, maybe the best position for this one is having him out November 22nd for the Arkansas game I mentioned. That's probably the weekend you're going to see a lot of these guys. And Braylon Hodge, actually, I can't remember if it was UTEP or Sam Houston. Maybe it was San Jose. Did you see it? He was on campus
one
in
of the
Austin for
three
an official
non-conference.
visit
Yeah.
in September for a non-conference game. So this will be his second visit to Texas. If you want to traditionally follow the visits, that used to be kind of how you could pin things down. Maybe still a little bit in a recruit like Braylon Hodges' case, but it seems like he's enamored with Texas. I think that's the offer that's really caught his attention, and you can't discount Michigan. You can't discount Oregon. But I think, if that is his last visit before early signing day, that's probably a pretty good indicator that, he feels pretty good about Texas, and the fact that, Texas needs to take a bigger linebackers class this cycle. 2024, it was just Ty Anthony Smith. 2025, they get a few more guys, but they miss late on the
Kellen
kid.
Wiley.
Yes, Wiley that went to Michigan. They've had to go to the portal,
Miami.
whether for Blackshire or Black or Brad Spence. So they need, and we talk about all this, like everyone's like, why can't they just go to the portal, go do that? And I think Texas, they'll do it if they need to, but Steve Sarkisian really does harp on, they want to be a program that's develops players. They don't want to just go get guys out of the portal every offseason, bring them into the program, risk maybe affecting the locker room, affecting the culture. Like they want to recruit these guys young and bring them up in the program. Obviously, that's easier said than done. Sorry, I just got a text. And then, so yeah, we'll see. But I think Texas would like to take three linebackers this class. And I think Hodge would be preferably their third guy, with Tyler Atkinson, Kosio, and Kosio Okpala being the other two. So yeah, that's where they're at right now. Texas upcoming, and we'll see if anybody else gets in the mix for another visit for him in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, with Hodge, already been to Michigan, decommitted from Michigan State right after that OV to Ann Arbor. Up next, he's going out to Oregon. I forget for which game weekend, but one of the home game weekends in Eugene. I believe that'll be his first time in Eugene, and the trip to Ann Arbor was his first time in Ann Arbor. So the fact that he's already been to Texas is extremely important, because one thing I forgot to bring up, and all three of these guys, they play at really good programs. Fairview and Boulder 7-1. I don't know Cherry Creek's record, but they're making playoffs and will go a few rounds deep. Vero Beach, where Micah Smith plays, is either 7-1 or 8-0. Like, playing in the playoffs, depending on when their seasons end, could have an impact on if they're able to visit Texas. Hodge has obviously already been to Texas. If his team is still playing in the playoffs and he can't make it, oh well. He's already been to Austin before and has seen a lot of the things that he'll see on the OV anyways. So I think that's something to mention. And also, like, man, if he visits Oregon and is like, I'm tired of the recruiting process. I've already seen what I need to see at Texas. I already seen what I need to see at Oregon and at Michigan, the two other schools in it. Maybe he shuts it down early. I don't know. He's already been to Texas, so they can still win it that way. And as far as Hodge goes, like, I'm with you. They need another linebacker in this class. You signed one in 24, Ty Anthony Smith. You signed basically one in 2025. You had Bo Barnes and Jonathan Cunningham, but Cunningham is, spent more time with safeties and the nickels than he has in the linebacker room up to this point. Is he really going to be a true linebacker in the SEC for the Longhorns? I'm not sure. Could have kind of a Mo Blackwell type career arc almost. I think that is what it could be trending towards. But hey, Texas, they will return Leon Lafau, Ty Anthony Smith, Bo Barnes, Jonathan Cunningham next year at linebacker. Brad Spence doesn't really count for that because he's primarily played edge this year. So the fact that you're only returning 4 scholarship linebackers, really 3 of only which are linebackers, and only 2 of those 3 have really played up to this point. Tyler Atkinson's coming in. He will play as a freshman. He's the most ready to play linebacker at any linebacker in 2026. But Kosiak Paul is going to need time. He's an edge rusher in high school. He has to be taught the actual, parts of linebacker play, and that takes some time. Braylon Hodge, he'd be able to play earlier at a school like Texas than Akpala would, who needs, that development and coaching. So he is very important. And I don't know how you feel about this, Hank, but if I had to rank them based on who I think is most important to land of the 3 senior evals or senior guys they're targeting, I would go Micah Smith. I mean, it's if I were to say non-O-line right there for number 1, I think our ratings would be horrible for episode 1 or whatnot. But you have to go O-line. Micah Smith is 1, 2, Braylon Hodge at linebacker. Just talked about why they need linebackers. And then 3, Teray Davis, I think is kind of just sprinkles on top at this point with how their DB class and DB room is set up for the future.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting. And obviously, there's still time that, they have another bye week. The staff is going to go out on the road and see kids. Is there a guy that catches their eye late? Probably not in this era. I've having covered Alabama in the past, I remember a mid-November Jahmyr Gibbs name popping up. I want to say he was committed to Georgia Tech at the time. I can't remember.
Yeah,
but
play for Deshard Choice. He's
yeah,
who got him there.
of course. Yeah. How could I forget? But he, everyone was his high school tape, his senior tape was so good. People thought he was fast forwarding it because it was like, he was just so fast and just breaking away. But no, he's just Jahmyr Gibbs. And now obviously he's a stud with the Detroit Lions. So, so we'll see what the bye week brings. I don't think you should expect like a wave of new 2026 targets. There's guys they're talking to, for example, Aiden Harris is a guy, defensive lineman committed to South Carolina right now. He recently did an update with Anna Adams out in North Carolina in the Carolina region. Said he's still hearing from Texas. Texas actually offered him last January when the staff was out on the road, but obviously he's committed to South Carolina. But as we're going to talk about, there's a lot of different there's a lot of moving parts, and you did a whole stampede on it yourself about the chaos that the coaching carousel, the upcoming coaching carousel, or obviously, or honestly, the one we're on right now. We see jobs opening left and right each weekend, despite it being just past the midway point of the season. So, just your thoughts on just this year and how maybe it could be one of the more chaotic coaching carousels, and I guess how that could potentially impact Texas recruiting.
Yeah, let me set the stage first on how this has impacted Texas recruiting in the past. 2022, the class that laid the groundwork for Steve Sarkisian and his staff to have success at Texas. Two headliners from the O-line group, Cam Williams, Kelvin Banks. Both were Oregon Duck commits, committed to play for Mario Cristobal. And then about a week before signing day, Miami fires their coach, brings Cristobal to the 305. Kelvin Banks decommits immediately, ends up at Texas. And then Cam Williams, he actually officially visited Miami and gave the Hurricanes a chance. But you know the story. Ended up at Texas. They both are now playing in the NFL. Some other examples, these aren't all of them, but you know the most important ones when you look back the last few years. Jalen Gilbo, he actually was committed to Texas under Tom Herman. Tom Herman gets fired. Sark comes in. He decommits. Eventually ends up committing to Gary Patterson and TCU. And then at the end of that 2021 season, TCU met with Gary Patterson to tell him, hey, you are resigning after this year. We'll let you finish the year. And he told them to shove it and that he was quitting. That opened the door for Texas to circle back, and they ended up flipping Jalen Gilbo on Thanksgiving in 2021. I remember getting the notification at the table. Savion Red, not the biggest guy or biggest recruit, obviously no longer at Texas, but flipped from SMU to Texas, or Texas actually offered him after Sonny Dykes left SMU to take the TCU job. Xavier Bryce, same deal, no longer at Texas, but was committed to Oklahoma. Lincoln Riley leaves for USC. Texas offers him, hosts him for a visit. He commits. Rest is history. Anthony Hill, this isn't a coach firing, but it's kind of similar. Anthony Hill, a lot of people forget, he was committed to play linebacker for the Aggies. He was going to play in College Station for Texas A&M, and took several game day visits in the fall of 2022. One of them was the Week 2 game when A&M lost to Appalachian State at home. That swung open the door. He started, returning Texas's calls. Eventually, they were able to convince him to decommit. He does. It looks like Jimbo's going to get fired, but he keeps his job. And after that, it was the Texas versus the field. Texas obviously won out. Colton Vasek, again, not a coach firing, but he flipped to Texas shortly after the Longhorns beat Oklahoma 49-0. While Vasek was in the OU recruit section cheering for north of the Red River for the first time in his life, because his dad obviously played at Texas, grew up in Austin, grew up a Texas fan. DeAndre Moore Jr., one of the key contributors to the Texas offense last few years, was committed to Louisville originally. Louisville, they fired their coach, or they either fired him or Scott Satterfield left for Cincinnati. I forget, but regardless, head coach is no longer there. And Texas swoops in. They end up flipping him and getting him the second or third day of the 3-day signing period. That was an interesting one. In 2024, Xavier Filsaime, Texas offered him the week of the Texas OU game his senior year. He ended up flipping from Florida to Texas, and the catalyst for that was the fact that Billy Napier fired his entire defensive staff so he could keep his job. All of Filsaime's primary, secondary recruiters had new jobs. They left, but the nail in the coffin for them was firing Corey Raymond. Within 30 minutes of that news breaking, we at Horns 24/7 actually heard from a source in Austin that someone in Filsaime's camp called Texas and said, we're coming to Texas within 30 minutes of the Corey Raymond firing breaking, because he's now at LSU, was at LSU previously, but was at Florida for a little bit. Wardell Mack, another defensive back prospect that flipped from the Gators. He flipped like right around the time when Florida was starting to fire those coaches. In Texas, also won out over LSU for him. Anthony Smith, similar deal with Anthony Hill, an A&M linebacker commit, and then he decommitted once Jimbo Fisher was actually fired that November. Mike Elko and the Aggies gave another run at it, got pretty close, but the final weekend before signing day, Smith was in Austin for his Texas OV, and Longhorns were able to get it done. He is Jeff Choate's parting gift for the Longhorns. And then in the transfer portal, it's helped as well. Ryan Sanborn, who was an all Big 12 honorable mention punter in 2023, went in the portal 5 days after Stanford fired David Shaw. Some other transfers that have left their schools to come to Texas after firing. Tia Savea, Bill Norton, two Arizona D-tackle transfers, left Arizona after Jed Fish left Arizona for the Washington job. Kendrick Blackshire, Amari Nyblack, and Isaiah Bond all transferred out of Alabama into Texas after Nick Saban retired. Silas Bolden, the Oregon State playmaker who spent one season in Austin, transferred or went in the portal after Jonathan Smith left, took the Michigan State job. Matthew Golden transferred to Texas after Houston fired Dana Holgerson. And then the transfers on this year's team, Justin Wilcox wasn't fired at Cal, but Jack Andrews, every year he spent at Cal, which was 3, he had a different offensive coordinator and tight ends coach all 3 years. Emmett Mosley, the fifth, went in the portal just a few weeks after Troy Taylor was fired at Stanford when Andrew Luck fired him in the middle of spring ball. Travis Shaw went in the portal about a month after UNC fired Mac Brown. And then Cole Brevard, big 99 in the middle, went in the portal 2 days after Purdue fired Ryan Walters. So few programs have benefited more than Texas from, if coaches getting fired, retiring, or position coaches getting fired. Like, I mean, it felt like 24 names, and a lot of them were key contributors or were at one point. So hey, what guys could Texas poach from commitment classes or rosters via the portal? Well, there are currently 7 Power 4 jobs open, and we are not even at the end of the month of October. For those counting at home, last year there were about 2.5 dozen FBS jobs that opened, but only 6 were Power 4. So we already have more Power 4 openings before the end of the month of October than we did last year. It's setting up to be the craziest coaching carousel since the late 2021, I guess, time period. It's when Brian Kelly left Notre Dame for LSU. That's when Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma for USC. That's when Florida hired Billy Napier. There's been a few other moves, just forgetting them. So the open jobs, Arkansas, they've pretty much lost every commitment from guys that Texas would be interested in at the high school level. Have a few players on defense. Edge rusher Quincy Rhodes might be a draft pick in April, though. Same with cornerback Julian Neal, but safety Jaheim Singletary, tight end Jaden Platt, and a guard Kobe Branham are guys I think they could have interest in. Same with backup offensive tackle Shaq McCroy. Oklahoma State doesn't have anyone on that roster, but Texas was evaluating one of their decommitments, Josiah Villamel out of Fort Bend Travis. Oregon State, they don't have anyone. Penn State does, however, have some guys not super familiar with this roster, but they recruited O-line exceptionally well. Same with front seven recruiting. They just had big game James Franklin as their coach and couldn't execute. TJ Shanahan, who played at Westlake, where you went, he's originally from the Orlando area, but moved to Westlake for his junior and senior year. Spent the first 2 years of his college career at Texas A&M. Provided backup guard, starting guard duties at A&M. Wanted to change of scenery, though, and transferred to Penn State, where he has started this year at guard. Maybe he wants to come back to Austin. He only has 1 year of eligibility remaining, but has 2 years of SEC experience, 1 year of Big Ten experience, and at this point is very much an upgrade over what Texas would have coming back at guard next year. Stanford, don't really see anything there. The one name that caught my eye, Emeka Ugorji. He went to South Oak Cliff in Dallas out of high school, originally chose Stanford over A&M, and I believe Oklahoma or Texas Tech. It was another bigger school. Academics were a huge factor. I don't know. Texas, they know a lot of the people in his circle. He's a South Oak Cliff kid. They have Malik Muhammad on their roster, South Oak Cliff alum. Maybe he's a guy. I mean, he's been starting at right tackle for them and has graded pretty well as a freshman playing in the ACC. UCLA, we've kind of covered guys Texas could have interest in there. Don't know the roster very well. And then, hey, let's think about these, or Florida. Sorry, the Florida job is open since I wrote this story. Florida, they have several guys in their recruiting class. Kendall Gerville, obviously top 247 lineman. Texas finished second on back in June or July when he committed. Ja'Reilyn McCoy, he's an edge rusher out of Mississippi. Texas had interest in at one point, had an OV scheduled at one point, but committed to Florida before he made it to Austin for that OV. And then Hezzy Kent, he's a guy Texas was recruiting in the summer, a tight end, but in the sources that told you that you were told by sources that there probably won't be much interest there if it were to open up again, at least for the Longhorns. So, hey, what other jobs in the SEC could come open? Auburn? Or go ahead.
Auburn, and just to note, to plug your Stampede there, you could have had all this information from Jordan that he just listed off 2 weeks ago if you're subscribed to Horns 24/7. But anyway, yeah, no, it is going to be crazy. I think Auburn's the easiest one to look at right now and say, I mean, Hugh Freeze is underperforming Brian Harsin, which is, or is that the right word? Yeah,
No,
compared to Brian Harsin, which is saying a lot. And so I don't think, as much money as the Auburn NIL fund and the boosters and everyone's putting into that program to not get any returns and to have they have really good talent. Like, if Hugh Freeze gets fired, the run on Cam Coleman is going to be up there. I mean, and other guys they have on their roster. I mean, they have, I don't know what year Robert Woodyard is, but they have like, pretty high level all SEC caliber players on their roster. So, be watching that. I'm curious to see what happens with South Carolina. Obviously, there's not an opening, and but with Virginia Tech being open, Shane Beamer, obviously his dad's a legendary coach from Virginia Tech. Does he want to jump ship now with South Carolina after they've had pretty disappointing season compared to the hype they had coming in? That could open up some potential opportunities, in the portal or in the recruiting cycle. And I should note, kids committed to schools so let's say Florida is getting a new head coach. So everyone that's already officially visited Florida in high school can officially visit, and maybe even the portal too, can officially visit Florida again with the new coach. So, they're going to have try to have all their commits come back on officials to meet the new coach. So that kind of adds another little wrinkle into the whole recruiting process. But yeah, Auburn, South Carolina, I think beyond that, am I missing anyone that Oklahoma, I guess, they'd
oh yeah,
really, I thought I was actually pretty impressed the fact that Oklahoma, after a pretty emotional loss to Texas in the Red River Shootout, to go out to South Carolina, as if they're good or bad, that's a tough place to play in South Carolina. They went out and looked pretty solid in their return. They have a pretty brutal back end of the schedule though. If that comes the rails, if it goes off the rails, I know people will start, calling for Brent Reynolds, name a little bit louder, but I think those are probably the three that aren't open now that I think you could realistically, and maybe Kentucky, it's hard, I think Kentucky's or Mark Stoops is kind of getting the most out of Kentucky that anybody can get out of Kentucky. We'll see. And then, if guys like, if a Clark Lee, I'm surprised his name isn't generating more. I know he loves being at Vanderbilt. He's a Vanderbilt alum, but what if he got the Penn State job, or if it comes open just via promotions of guys going elsewhere? I find it hard to envision LSU moving off of Brian Kelly. I guess crazier things have happened, but yeah, I mean, there's no question this is going to be the craziest coaching carousel. Just with the the aftershock, the after effects of just when these jobs start getting filled. Lane Kiffin if he goes to Florida, Ole Miss is open. Who's going to fill Ole Miss? It's going to be this crazy domino effect. And I don't think Texas is going to be immune from it either. I would imagine, they lose assistant coaches to promotions or guys going elsewhere every year, whether they go to the NFL, get another better job in college. In terms of like a promotion from position to coordinator or even coordinator to head coach. I'm sure that'll happen to Texas as well. I know fans are, they have their opinions on what changes they want made, but obviously that comes down to Steve Sarkisian and the administration. But yeah, it's going to be wild. And to put that all into a 15-day portal window one time in January is going to make it even crazier. I'm just happy it's after the holidays. We can get into the new year. You're not trying to Christmas shop while also trying to figure out where, this guy's going to announce if he showed up today on this visit on a random Wednesday afternoon. You can kind of be a little bit more focused and can really hone in on it. So yeah, it'll be interesting, no doubt.
Yeah. Just wanted to hit on some of the jobs you brought up. Shane Beamer, 32-36 and 16-21 in conference play in the 4.5 years he's been at South Carolina. I mean, they're pretty sure they're 3-4 and 1-4 in conference play right now. It's not looking great. They have some young O linemen, a few DBs. I think Texas could have interest in. They have a kid committed named Xavier Currents that Texas offered in the spring that they really like. He was great in San Antonio at the All-American Bowl as an underclassman. Oklahoma, they are 6-1, but their final 5 games are all against ranked teams. They have Bama, they have Tennessee, they have Ole Miss, they have LSU, and I'm forgetting the other team. So, I mean, I think they could get canned.
Ole Miss this weekend.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting too for Oklahoma and Brent Venables because John Mateer has 1 year left. He can come back next year. It would set them up much better long term and short term if Mateer comes back next year, Arbuckle comes back, and that gives their 2026 QB commit Bo Bentley 1 year to redshirt because he is the future and that is the guy they want at quarterback after Mateer's done. And you obviously have Michael Fasusi. To be honest, I don't think he'd have it in him to go in the portal and end up at Texas after starting year one at Oklahoma. But, a name to know. You brought up Mark Stoops. Maybe he loses his job. LSU, maybe. In the Big Ten, looking at Michigan State and Wisconsin. In the Big 12, looking at Arizona, Baylor, Colorado, Kansas State, TCU. Colorado, I don't think Deion Sanders will get fired, but, he's getting older, some health problems. If he does go in the – or not if Deion doesn't – if Deion does retire or resign, Jordan Seaton is a tremendous left tackle they have. He could start at Texas right now. I mean, he could start pretty much anywhere in college, probably not at Alabama with Caden Proctor, but you get the point. And then in the ACC, Cal, Clemson. Could Clemson cut Dabo? Highly doubt it, but who knows? Florida State, Mike Norvell, they have to pay that buyout eventually. They know they're firing him eventually. When are you going to do it? And then North Carolina, but I don't think they fire Bill Belichick after 1 year. But if you've read anything that's come out of Chapel Hill in the last month, you will know it is very realistic that he is not the coach there next year. So, looking forward to it. It's going to be crazy. Last thing I want to bring up, some portal rules have changed. Like you said, it's been narrowed down to a 15-day window from January 2nd to the 16th. But on top of that, when a head coach is fired, the old rules – a 30-day window would open immediately. Those players could hop in, transfer elsewhere. Now, when a head coach is fired, the timer for when a portal window opens for that roster would not start until 5 days after the new coach has been announced. So Arkansas, Oklahoma State, Virginia Tech, they made moves before the rule change. They're grandfathered in under the old rules. It has still not been 30 days since Sam Pittman or Pry or Deshaun Foster, UCLA were fired, so those guys still have some time left to enter the portal. But Florida, those players cannot transfer until 5 days after a new coach has been hired. And the way the calendar is set up, let's say Florida gets Lane Kiffin. Let's just use that as an example. If they hire Lane Kiffin at any point before January 2nd, the portal still will not open until January 2nd for Florida. So if Florida hires Lane Kiffin December 1st, 5 days later, December 6th, the window will not open because the regular window is opening in a month. So the 5-day kind of cool down thing after a new coach is hired really doesn't matter unless a new coach gets hired at the end of January, which a Power 4 school is very unlikely to do because then they would have missed out on the bulk of the portal and obviously high school signing day as well. So just wanted to bring up those new rules. But to wrap it up, talking Texas high school football, in future episodes, we will have 5 matchups, but in this one, we're just doing one. We got a big one down in Travis County this weekend. My 7-0 Lake Travis Cavaliers versus Hank's 6-1 Westlake Chaparrals. I'd say fun fact, but this isn't fun for my side of this. Lake Travis has not won since 2019. Westlake has won 5 in a row. They did not play in 2020. Few players for the Cavs tested positive for COVID, so that game was canceled that year. But in 2021, Cade Klubnik, Jaden Greathouse put up 63 on Lake Travis. They won 63-21. In 2022, Westlake won 35-20. In 2023, in the regular season, Westlake won 20-14. They met again in the playoffs. Westlake beat them again, 21-14. And then in 2024, Westlake won 24-17. So Lake Travis has only won 3 of the last 10. Total kind of flip-flop of what it had been.
Yeah.
I remember Lake Travis, their first loss in a long time, 2017, was my freshman year at Lake Travis, Garrett Wilson's senior year, Hudson Card's junior year. And I remember we had signs in our student section that said the last time Westlake beat Lake Travis, the iPhone hadn't even come out. And that was in 2017. So Lake Travis dominated this rivalry for a long time, but now it's flipped. The Chaps, 7 of the last 10, 5 in a row. Who do you like this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, how can I not pick Westlake? But listed off all the scores. I mean, Lake Travis, they're getting close. They have a chance. No, but yeah. I mean, my exposure to this rivalry, obviously, I went to Westlake. I graduated '09, so the first time Texas, the first time Westlake. It used to be Westlake was 5A, Lake Travis was 4A, and so like they never played. 2007 that changed. Maybe it was 2006. It was 2006. Westlake went to Lake Travis and faced off with I don't remember the quarter. No, was it Garrett Gilbert? I can't remember. Nick Foles
Or
was the quarterback for Westlake.
Todd Reesing.
It might have been Todd Reesing because there was two. Yeah, I mean, there's so many Lake Travis quarterbacks to try to remember. But
That's what we do,
they went they went to Lake Travis. They beat them, and that was Westlake's state title run when they ultimately lost to South Lake Carroll, Riley Dodge, Todd Dodge that year. But that was Nick Foles' senior year. There were some other big time players. Ryan Swope was on that team as a sophomore safety at the time before he switched over to running back. And then 2007, Lake Travis came to Westlake, and that was then Westlake beat them. And then after that, my senior year, we started losing to Lake Travis every single year. Like it was back to back. I think we played them at Westlake my senior year. Garrett Gilbert beat us. And then I think Baker Mayfield came along, and so on, so on, so on. And then Westlake flipped the script a little bit. So, but yeah, no, I mean, I haven't watched a ton of Westlake this year. I've been around that program a little bit. Obviously, Coach Salazar has been very nice to us. Reese Weiss, the quarterback, committed to Ole Miss, so kind of a dual threat playmaker there. Was able to see his high school debut when I think it was 2023, maybe four. No, it was, I don't know, recently. But he came in against Converse Judson and kind of took hold of that starting job. Now he's committed to Ole Miss, and obviously, that'll be interesting to see if something happens if Lane Kiffin takes the Florida job. Does Reese Weiss go with him? Interesting. Side note to tie that back into the recruiting conversation, but yeah, I'll take Westlake at home. I'll give them by a touchdown. But what do you think?
I think it's a one-score game, regardless of who wins. Westlake, they played a bit of a tougher schedule. Their one loss, 29-22 loss to Prosper, a game played at UMHB in Belton. But they did go to Houston and beat Atascocita 35-28, who beat Westlake the year prior in non-district play. And their other big win, a 37-14 victory over Cibolo Steel at Chaparral Stadium. Lake Travis, obviously 7-0 undefeated. Their big wins, a 48-21 win over Martin in Austin, a 28-20 win over Rockwall in Rockwall, and Rockwall's who took down and upset North Crowley earlier this year. North Crowley's lone loss. And another big win for Lake Travis, 59-13 win over Midland Legacy. And then a 14-7 win over Dripping Springs. Bit of a rock fight. That was last week's game. Lake Travis, that's kind of what they have to do this year versus really good teams. Make it a rock fight. Lake Travis's strength is their defense. They have two power forward prospects on their D-line, TCU edge commit, Carter Buck. Kid I've loved from day one. I think he's a guy that could play at Texas, and that is worth an offer if they get to December and still only have one edge rusher committed. And then on the other side, Ben Duncombe. His brother, Bobby Duncombe, actually played at Westlake and then went to SMU. But Ben goes to Lake Travis. His father and uncle both played football at Texas way back in the day. I believe it was in the 80s. They were linebackers. So a lot of bloodlines there. He's committed to Kentucky as a longer burn project, has great shot put stuff, went to state for the shot and disc in 6A, but he's going to need some time to develop. He's a longer burn guy. At linebacker, UTSA linebacker commit Braden Lott. It's his first year playing varsity. He started at Leander at running back as a freshman and sophomore in varsity. Transferred to Lake Travis. They didn't like that. They called the UIL, and he had to play JV as a junior, but now a senior, committed to UTSA. Those are kind of the three main guys on defense. You also have Braylon Griffin, the son of Michael Griffin. We also have Brian Arakpo Jr. rotating in. We got all of them. Kenny Vaccaro, he has a son who's a freshman. Derek Johnson has like three sons of Lake Travis. UT junior almost. And then on offense, the star of the show, Van Hopping. He's a Princeton running back commit. That's those are the guys to know. You know who I'm rocking with, Lake Travis, of course. I think they get it done. Not saying this just because I went there. I think Lake Travis is the better team this year, and I think both these teams have a really good shot at state. It is wide open in 6A D1. The 6A D2 state champ will be South Lake Carroll. I don't think that's going to be competitive for anyone, but D1 is wide open. So it'll be fascinating. Like I said, I like the Cavs and hoping they can get their first win since 2019. What I will close it with, because I know we got to get out of here. 2019, Lake Travis's last win. They won 26-25. Hudson Card is at quarterback. He broke his ankle in the second quarter and played the rest of the game. How did that happen? Well, Lake Travis had a kid playing with a broken arm in an air cast, and they had a shot of something that could numb his arm if it were to start hurting in the game. They get to halftime. Hudson Card breaks his ankle right before halftime. That shot goes to Hudson. He goes out in the second half, leads Lake Travis to a comeback victory, and they win 26-25. Westlake had a chance to kick a game-winning field goal, but it's usually this game used to be played the last week of the regular season. I don't know why that changed, but it has. So it was a cold November night. It's windy. The ball went up in the air and then got blown back. It didn't even cross into the end zone. And Lake Travis also knocked a sophomore year Cade Klubnik out of the game. That was when Todd Dodge was rotating 3 QBs throughout that entire season. I do not know why they did that. They put Klubnik in to save the day. And this kid named Trey Sophia, who now plays at West Point, pretty much just put him on his ass, and he was done for the day, and Lake Travis was able to get out of there with a win. So not saying they should hurt Reese Weiss. I think they can win without doing that, but hey, last time the Cavs won, it took some extra stuff, so they might need it tonight. Anyways, I like them to get it done, and should be a good night at Texas high school football. So looking forward to it. But yeah, anything else you want to hit on before we get out of here?
Nope, but yeah, we're gonna make this a weekly thing. Obviously, we're gonna hope to have it out every Thursday morning for y'all, and make sure to keep y'all up to date. It's gonna be a wild. I know recruiting's been kind of a little bit more quiet of late, but it's gonna pick up. As we get closer to signing day, as that portal gets closer, so there's gonna be plenty to track and plenty to talk about.
For sure. All right. Well, hey, we will see you next week. Thanks for tuning into the State of Recruiting. Again, this will be a new, or not new, but brought back weekly podcast for Horns 24/7. Appreciate y'all tuning in, and we'll see you next week.